This is narrative, so it might go faster than we think. Yeah, give me the gospel. All right. Okay, so Mark 7 and 8. Let me just take a peek. What was the last section? Oh, it's going to do that on me today. Okay. Sometimes I peek back and want a refresher of what was in the previous one. Okay, yes, the prophet without honor, the sending out of the 12, John the Baptist beheaded. Oh, that's what. Feeding of the 5,000, the walking on water. Okay, so when we last left our hero, he had come and walked on water. Cool. Okay. Sometimes it's good a refresher to know where we were in the gospel, to know the stories as we're going forward. All right. So the Pharisees and some of the teachers of the law who had come from Jerusalem gathered around Jesus and saw some of his disciples eating food with hands that were defiled, that is, unwashed. Okay, so our thoughts are going to go to, oh, this sounds like mom and what she would say about, cleaning your hands before you eat. No, this is ritual cleanness. This is, you've touched something or you've done something, you've defiled yourself, and now you need to, ceremonial washing has to take place. So this isn't just, wash your hands for 60 seconds and make sure you got all the dirt off. It's not that. This is a defiled, meaning your hands have touched something unclean. If you eat, your hands will then transfer the uncleanness to something else. Therefore, you're going to be consuming something that's unclean. So I know that might be a strange concept, idea. That's their problem, is they're unclean. They're transferring that uncleanness of their hands to something else, and transferring to themselves. So you'll notice there's a lot of uncleanness ideas and washing ideas. These don't have to do with germs. They're not germaphobes. that would be a funny meme if somebody wants to do that, is make a meme of the Pharisees being germaphobes because they're always concerned about washing things, but it's not the point. They're concerned with ritual cleanness. So the Pharisees and all the Jews did not eat unless they gave their hands a ceremonial washing, holding to the tradition of the elders. When they had come from the marketplace, they do not eat unless they wash, and they observe many other traditions, such as washing of cups, pitchers, and kettles. Okay, so let me give you an idea here. So you clean your dishes after you've eaten food, and then you put them away, and they're clean. Well, they're clean from the residue of food, but before you would eat, you would still need to do a ceremonial bath. That's what they're doing. They're doing a ceremonial bath, putting them through the water to ritually clean them before they use everything. So everything has to go through this. I recently saw someone who was showing pictures of the mikvah. That's the place where you get ceremonial clean before you enter the temple. And he was talking about every time you're going to go into the temple, you needed to go through the mikvah in order to enter the temple. And you had to do that. You had to do the ceremonial cleaning, and there was no way into the temple without doing that. Yeah, all you can think of is dishwasher memes. Oh, that would be funny. The Pharisees as dishwasher salesmen or dishwashing soap salesmen. That would be interesting. Pharisee soap or Pharisee dishwasher chain. I like the thought there. It would be funny. Not what they're talking about, but funny nonetheless. So the Pharisees and the teacher of the law asked Jesus, "Why don't your disciples live according to the traditions of the elders instead of eating food with defiled hands?" A bit pointed here, clearly. This is not just a question of why. They're not seeking to wonder and find out the answer. This is an accusation. It is pointed. It's really a declaration in the form of a question. You know how you do that with your kids or other people. You ask the question to beat them up with the answer. He replied, "Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you hypocrites." Sorry. We've been in the mode of Job and his dissing of his adversaries, his friends. Now Jesus turn around laying it down on the Pharisees. Yeah, Why don't I? Well, let me tell you what Isaiah said about you hypocrites. That's a pointed word. We think hypocrite's a pointed word. That's really a pointed accusation here. Don't hear that as a light rebuttal. No, that's a direct assault. It's a direct assault on them. These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are mere human rules. So they're making this huge argument about why don't your disciples follow the tradition of elders? And he quotes Isaiah saying the teachings are merely human rules. I've been asking a question totally related to this, so I'll share it with you. Most of you may not fully grasp where I'm going. That's okay. But I've been asking the question, are the ideas of having a church building and having worship in a giant sanctuary merely human rules? I've really been dwelling on that idea and that question. And you're saying, well, what do you mean by that? Well, if you look at the New Testament in Acts, when we get there, we'll spend some time looking at it. They're meeting in people's houses. They're gathering in marketplaces where the arena is. They're gathering in the public square. They're not going around as Christians in the first century building buildings for worship to happen. They're going to spaces that already exist. What's one of the freedoms that allows them to do? Is to focus on people rather than buildings. So that's all I'm asking with this question is, has the traditions that have been handed to us of you build a building and you build a bigger building when you outgrow your older building, and we keep focusing on what we can do in our buildings and making more spaces to do more things in our buildings, is that a tradition of humans that's been handed to us? So human rules on how to do church is what I'm asking a lot of questions about. Corporate worship is important, but when 2 or 3 are gathered, doesn't say where. Yes, and I'm not saying that so don't hear me say something. I'm not saying we should not gather for large corporate worship. I think we should. However, there are school buildings that have gymnasiums. There are school buildings that have amphitheaters. I live in a region where I can go to a symphony orchestra hall. How wonderful wouldn't that be to have worship in there? Is it being used on a Sunday morning? I doubt it. Could we rent it as a church? Probably. Would that be awesome? Oh, you bet it would be awesome. So I'm asking a larger philosophical question. I'm not pointing the finger, nor am I going to plan to go around and tell churches tear down their buildings and sell them or any of that stuff. I'm asking an approach question and a question about what we should do and what we should focus on. And that really is as asking what have I gotten that's human tradition? What's necessary to be the body of Christ? And one of the things that I've had a couple of conversations about is, can you build a virtual church building and that actually be a building and a place for gathering and worship? Well, so that's a whole different thing. I won't go further into that. But those things are related. All right. Enough of me sidetracking. Let's get back to Jesus. You have let go of the commands of God and are holding on to human tradition. See, that's my concern, really, is that I want to hold on to the commands of God and not let go of them, and I don't want to hold on to human tradition. That's what I'm concerned. Which of these am I doing? To put it in worldly terms, just some guy from Tennessee says, police departments might have policies they follow, but these policies aren't laws made by a legislative body. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what are the policies and traditions that we're holding on to, which isn't what God wants us to do? So that's all I'm saying is I'm in the process of asking a lot of those questions myself on what I do and what I want to encourage or guide other people to do, knowing that's not going to apply for all people in all places and all time. But I want to be able to answer the question, if I'm doing something, am I doing it merely because it's human rules and not doing it because I feel compelled by God to do it? So I hope that makes clear what I'm trying to say there. And he continued. Oh, so he's not done with them. You have a fine way of setting aside the commands of God in order to observe your own tradition. So he's made the accusation. Now he's going to, excuse me, give them evidence. Oh, I love this one. For Moses said, honor your father and your mother. Notice this is one of the 10 commandments. Not one of the other extra ones, the 10 commandments. And anyone who curses their father and mother is to be put to death. Okay, let me just check Exodus and Deuteronomy. That's the 10 commandments. This is an extra section. So he's combining 2 of those, expounding the 10 commandments with other commandments as well. But you say that if anyone declares that what has been used to help would be used to help their father or mother is Corban that is devoted to God, then you no longer let them do anything for their father or mother. Thus, you nullify the word of God by your tradition that you have handed down, and you do many things like that. Okay, so if you don't get this whole concept, I understand that. We don't use this idea of Corban. We might think of things as devoted to God, but let me try to break this down for you. Let's just say that you have your, I'll use simple numbers. Your paycheck is $100. You set aside $50 to give to God. You spent the other $50 on what you needed for yourself, your rent, your housing, your gas, whatever it is. You bet $50 on your all expenses. You set $50 aside to give to God, but you haven't given it to God yet. Wherever it's going to be, if it's supporting your church, it's supporting missionaries, whatever it is, you've devoted it to God. It's going to be your offering to God. And now your parents are in need and they say, could you help us out? We can't pay for our prescription drugs this month. We need help. And you go, sorry, I got 50, but it's devoted to God, so I don't have to give it to you. And I'm going to let it sit over here in the bank and make interest until I give it to God. And when I finally give it to God, then maybe I'll be able to help you. But I can't help you. Sorry, I'd love to, but this over here that I have, it's for God. It's not mine. So I don't have to give you anything. I can't give. My hands are tied. I've devoted to God. I'm so sorry. That's the reality of what he's pointing out to them. And I know their whole, our way of, unless you're in a rural farming community, you probably don't understand entirely this ebb and flow of you put all of your outputs out and you spend borrow a whole bunch of money to plant seed and to do everything you need to, and you don't get paid until you harvest the crop and then sell it at the end. And then you've got to keep some for all of the year after you make all your money in a short period or window of time. But think about that for a minute. If you got all of your pay in one paycheck for the year, so let's multiply that $100 and now let's make it, we'll just call it 10,000, or we'll just make it 1,000. That's an easy number. So it's 1,000. So you spend your 500 you need to on all your expenses for the year, and the other 500 is devoted to God. And you say, sorry, parents, I can't help you. I got to hang on to that to give to God when it's the right time to give it to him, which might be Easter. So I got to hang on to it till Easter. Can't give it away. Got to hold on to it. Can't do anything. Can't help you. That's what he has a problem with. They're taking a commandment and saying that a rule that they've created nullifies what God's clearly commanded us to do, and they're more concerned with the tradition that says, I can't because it's devoted to God. I'm sorry. They're using tradition to get out of doing what God's told them to. Their heart is in the wrong place. That's really what he's getting at. Hope that makes sense. Hope it's clear. If that makes sense, maybe throw a few amens to make sure I'm communicating. I know some of you are probably just chatting and listening, and that's fine. I just want to make sure that section made sense to you. Again, Jesus called the crowd to him and said, listen to me, everyone, and understand this. Nothing outside a person can defile them by going into them. Rather, it is what comes out of a person that defiles them. Oh, and then there's a footnote in verse 16 is missing. Some manuscripts include here the words of 423. Okay, so we've already read that. They put it back in here. Yeah, there's a few modern businesses that operate that way. jewelry businesses make probably 90% of their money at Christmas and Valentine's, so they have to. Oh yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of stores that make their money. Well, that's why. If you don't know why Black Friday is called Black Friday, it's because businesses are often in the red, so they've put out more expenses, and it's not until that day that they actually make money. So businesses often make all of them profit between Black Friday and the end of the year. Before that, they're in the red. They've spent more money than they've had come in. So in January, the rent was this, the products they had to pay were this, and the income was less. So they continue to have less income than expenses throughout the entire year until they get to Black Friday. That is where they get to zero, and then they are able to make profit the rest of the year. So yeah, good point there. So it's not just rural agriculture; it's business as a whole. That's a model that businesses have. So good point there. Yeah, it reminds me of those decorated Halloween stores and fireworks stores. Yeah, they make all their profit around one holiday. They only, if they were around and open the rest of the year, they would make no money. Who's going to go buy Halloween stuff right now? Not me. I'm not going to go buy it necessarily when they're open, but I wouldn't buy it now for sure. Okay, so it didn't tell us what 423 was. Does it down here? I'm scrolling a second. No, it doesn't. So some verses repeat what he said in 423, but most manuscripts don't have. So we're just going to leave it at that. But he's saying the point of what goes into a person comes out of a person. It's not what goes in that defiles them. It's what comes out of a person. After he had left the crowd and entered the house, his disciples asked him about this parable. I didn't think it was a parable. Seemed pretty straightforward and clear to me. Okay, but I like this. I pointed this out before. I love when they ask, because usually when they ask, I don't get it. Your wife says if it was on sale. Well, yes, I understand that idea whatsoever. I entirely do. Are you so dull, he asked. Don't you see that nothing that enters a person from the outside can defile them? For it doesn't go into their heart, but into their stomach, and then out of the body. In saying this, Jesus declared all foods clean. Love that. It's put in here. It's not added. It's put in here by Mark. So Mark, I'm going to make a connection here. Mark is written and thought to be the Gospel of Peter, that Peter was the one giving him the info. When we get to the book of Acts, Peter is the one who got the revelation, remember, of the sheet coming up and down that declared all foods clean. Here, as he's recounting and telling Mark the story, he wants to make sure that he is letting us know that this was the place when Jesus laid that out. He didn't understand it till later when the book of Acts happens, but he wants to put it in here. Now, he's not writing about the book of Acts and things that happen later, so this is how he puts that in there and makes sure that people know and understand all foods are clean, because they go in the stomach and they come out. It's stuff that goes into the heart that makes someone unclean, not stuff that goes into their stomach. Okay. So that might have been something you wouldn't have connected. Hopefully that makes some sense for you. He went on. What comes out of a person is what defiles them. For it is within out of a person's heart, the evil thoughts come. Sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly. All these evils come from inside and defile a person. Okay, again, I think these are descriptive of what defiles a person. They're not all inclusive. This isn't if it's not on the list, it doesn't defile a person. No, he's saying these kinds of things are acts that come from inside of us and they defile us. They're not acts that come into us. So, but just pointing out, because, well, does slander include gossip? Yes, I would say so. But we could make arguments about that. Is gossip on this list? Yes. Is spreading rumors on this list? Is bearing false witness against your neighbor on this list? Well, I would say so, but I don't see it listed there, so I might be able to go do that. No, it's the attitude and the actions of evil that come from the heart. That's his whole point here. They all point to arrogance and pride as well. Oh, North Hill coming in with the insights. Yeah, absolutely. They all point to arrogance and pride. Absolutely. So, yeah, so much. Well, yeah, if I dwell on that, we won't get through our text today. Okay. So we're going to continue. So now Jesus left that place. So yeah, he's done. He's tired with these Pharisees just being, well, stupid. Just they're being prideful and arrogant. That's what they're being. Okay. Yeah, Jesus always cuts deeper. You know, I've pointed this out, and I love to point this out. The only people that Jesus points the finger at are religious people. So I made this point to someone the other day. I thought this was great. So let me share it with you. If you've not heard this or seen this, there's a new way to say something I've heard a lot of times. So Jesus points the finger at religious people, but he opens his arms to sinners. Isn't that great? He opens his arms to sinners. He points the finger at religious people. Just love that contrast there, that image there of Jesus wants to embrace and hug and welcome in sinners, and he does that repeatedly, and he points the finger at the religious people that think they're better than everyone else. Polygon Pass redeemed a tip of the cap. Well, there you are, friend. Welcome in. Glad to have you here. Enjoy your day. Oh, good stuff in here. Yeah. All right, so Jesus left the place, and he went to the vicinity of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know it. Again, throughout Mark, we have this divine secret idea. He doesn't want anyone to know. The only place he told someone to tell was the man who was possessed and was a Gentile. He was the only one that was told to go tell and be a witness. Everyone else told to keep their mouth shut. Don't tell anyone. He could not keep his presence secret. In fact, as soon as she heard about him, a woman whose little daughter was possessed by an impure spirit came and fell at his feet. The woman was a Greek, born in Syrian Phoenicia. She begged Jesus to drive the demon out of her daughter. First, let the child eat all they want, he told her, for it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. Lord, she said, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. Then he told her, for such a reply, you may go. The demon has left your daughter. She went home and found her child lying on the bed and the demon gone. Okay, I think there's some confusion that people have at this, because Jesus is referring to her as a dog, and why should the children not have it and you have it? And that kind of, okay, the Gentiles are what he's referring to. So he's just saying a Gentile. He's already healed a Gentile. He's already cast a demon out. She's asking for something that she's heard about. So Jesus isn't saying this to drive her away. I've heard one pastor tell it, and I kind of like the way he did. He's telling her this and then giving her a wink and kind of a, yeah, so say more. Yeah, you know, I really want to do this, but I need a little more. I need other people to hear what that I'm telling you, because I'm really going to blow their minds when I do this. So I want you to say more. And then you give a little wink with the question. You know, you ever had that? Like you say, no, I couldn't do that. Oh, I couldn't heal a Gentile. And she's supposed to reply and engage further. And why do they say that? Well, look, he says, he told her, for such a reply, you may go. The demon has left your daughter. She engaged further. This is a different way. We have this often because of her faith. He wanted her to demonstrate her faith. Again, this is a Gentile. And he says, go, your child is healed. The demon is gone. So, again, he does not discriminate against the outsider. This sounds a little bit like it and harsh, but it's really an invitation to persist. Are you so, let me just put it this way. You have so little faith in Jesus that if you ask once and he gives a little resistance, you're not willing to persist because you don't care enough about your daughter and the prayer concern you're bringing. No, it's persistence. He wanted persistence. He wanted demonstration of faith. He wanted further so that he could share that with those around him. And then notice again, your child's, the demon's gone. So she went and found that it was true. The demon was gone. Then he left the vicinity of Tyre and went through Sidon, down to the Sea of Galilee and into the region of the Decapolis. That's 10 cities. There some people brought to him a man who was deaf and could hardly talk, and they begged Jesus to place his hands on him. After he took him aside away from the crowd, Jesus put his fingers in the man's ears. Then he spit and touched the man's tongue. He looked up to heaven and with a deep sigh said to him, Epaphatha. I'm not good with my Greek there. Epaphatha, which means be open. At this, the man's ears were open, his tongue was loosed, and he began to speak plainly. Jesus commanded them not to tell anyone. But the more he did so, the more he kept talking about it. Come back to that in a second. People were overwhelmed with amazement. He has done everything well, they said. He even makes the deaf hear and the mute speak. Okay, so we have this person who is mute and deaf. And they bring him to Jesus. Notice, he takes him away from the crowd. He doesn't want to do this in public. He wants to do it privately. If you have someone from third world countries, Mark is a great gospel to read because there are these things that they're going to grasp and understand. He spit and touched the man. Now, your mom may have done this, or you as a mom may have done this. Let me clean that up for you. We understand the power of spit in that regard because it's what we have available. But there are groups of people who believe in a mystical, spiritual power that spit has. We don't fully do it. So when you see these miracles where Jesus uses spit, they're really more intense than we think. It's not just, ooh, yuck, nasty. Why would Jesus do that? No, there is power in that residue from him that he's using to bring about these healings. So it's a really important action in these stories, and we kind of poo-poo it and disregard it. But notice this. The man who couldn't speak, and I love the language, his tongue was loosed, and he commanded him not to tell anyone. He commands a guy who has not been able to talk, now that he can talk, to not talk. Do you get the irony there of, I just healed you, you can now talk, and my command to you is don't tell anyone you can talk. How? How could this man possibly fulfill that command of Jesus? He can't. I know I'm harping on this every time we're in Mark, that Jesus continues to tell people, don't tell everyone, don't tell everyone. We're supposed to be upset the fact that Jesus keeps telling people, don't tell everyone. Why? Because we're not supposed to just be upset about it. We're supposed to go do it. We're supposed to go tell people about Jesus everywhere we go and every chance we get and tell them, what has God done for me? All right, Polygon says, it does sound a little tongue-in-cheek. At least I hope so. I like that. But that was a good comment there. Yeah, a little tongue-in-cheek here. Yeah. Don't do this. Or the other before that. Yeah. Hey, come. I really don't want to heal you. Come forward. Yeah. Jesus. Again, it's the pointed finger at the religious leaders and the open arms for other people, for sinners, for Gentiles. Okay, so Jesus feeds the 4,000. Yes, that's right. You didn't hear that wrong. We already did the feeding of the 5,000. Now there's the feeding of the 4,000. He duplicates this miracle. And how do we know it's a duplicate? Because the numbers and the details are different. It wasn't someone got it wrong and they repeated it in a different gospel in a different way. We already read the feeding of the 5,000 in Mark. Now we're reading the feeding of the 4,000. The details are different. During those days, another large crowd gathered. Since they had nothing to eat, Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I have compassion for these people. Again, that is the word for Jesus. He sees people, he has compassion. They've already been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. So this time, maybe they were there, they were prepared, they brought food. It's just too late. They've run out. If I send them home hungry, they will collapse on the way because some of them have come a long distance. So if you remember last time, it was the disciples when he said, give them something to eat. They could send them to the marketplace. They were the ones trying to drive the people away to go get food, and then said, we don't have the finances to do it. Now he's saying, I can't send them away because they don't have enough strength and energy to get home. They need food for the journey. I have compassion. What are we going to do? His disciples answered, but where in this remote place can anyone get enough bread to feed them? So it's not about the money this time. It's about there's no store and no place to get enough. How many loaves do you have? Jesus asked. 7, they replied. Notice the difference. The first time, they have to go look and find out what resources they have. This time, they were at least prepared. They counted what they had. They had 7. He told the crowd to sit down on the ground. Notice that when he's going to do these miracles of feeding, they sit on the ground. Why? Because sitting is how you ate. And now we don't eat that way, but they would have lounged against someone else, and they would have sat there, and this is how they would have eaten. And they would have eaten and taken off the table, and they'd be lounging on the person behind them, and they'd sit around the table. So by sitting on the ground, they are in the preparation stage for the meal. Standing is the stage where you are engaged in listening to the person who's speaking. We don't do it that way. We sit when we're engaged in someone who's speaking, and we sit when we are engaged in food most of the time. So difference in culture there. Just wanted to point that out. Okay. So they're sitting on the ground. When he had taken the 7 loaves and given thanks, he broke them and gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people, and they did so. They had a few small fish as well. He gave thanks for them also and told the disciples to distribute them. The people ate and were satisfied. Afterwards, he picked up 7 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. About 4,000 were present. After he had sent them away, he got in a boat with his disciples and went to the region of Dalmanutha. Okay, so last time there were 12 baskets left over. This time there are 7. We could read into that. There may be some significance in there. 7 being the number of completion. But again, I would point this out. There were leftovers. Why did Jesus make leftovers? To show the abundance, that there wasn't just I got a little snack and that was all that I had. No, in his meal, in his blessing of them, it was a blessing of abundance and overflow, that there was plenty. And there was, in fact, more than was necessary, more than enough. The Pharisees came and began to question Jesus, to test him. They asked him for a sign from heaven. He sighed deeply and said, why does this generation ask for a sign? Truly, I tell you, no sign will be given it. Then he left, got back in the boat, and crossed to the other side. All right, thanks for coming in. Thanks for lurking. Oh, this is your favorite story. Which part? The yeast of the Pharisees coming up, or the miracle that he just did of the 4,000? Here's why the sigh. I want to say here. Jesus just fed the 4,000. He previously fed the 5,000. If you want a sign from heaven, what did God do in the wilderness with the people, with Moses? He fed them daily with manna. He gave them what? Bread from heaven. He now has given the people bread from heaven on 2 occasions. And they're asking for a sign. I'm sorry. You just saw a sign. Did you not see it? Did you not understand it? Did you miss that God cares enough about our daily needs to provide for us and provide more than we need? And there were leftovers. And that all came from God himself to the people who had no means outside of themselves to be fed. And they're like, well, now that you fed us, we'd really like a sign. I know the food was okay. It could have been better. I mean, we just had barley loaves. I mean, I really was looking for some bleached white bread. That would have been great. Maybe a ciabatta, a baguette. I haven't had a baguette in, who knows how long. I'm just baffled in some regards, but I understand they don't see it because they don't want to see it. They have no desire to see it. And you might encounter people that you're sharing the gospel with. They have no desire to see it. They only have a desire to tear you down. That's their desire. Their desire is to tear Jesus down. Why? Because he's a threat to their power. That's all they care about. Their power, their prestige. Here's someone else stealing some glory. We need to stop him. Put a stop to this guy. How do we do it? Let's demand something he can't do. Okay. So, following that, the disciples had forgotten to bring bread, except for the one loaf they had with them in the boat. Okay, so he just had 7 baskets of leftover. They get in the boat, they forgot to bring food. You had 7 baskets, you left it. We brought one, but we brought one. Be careful, Jesus warned them. Watch out for the yeast of the Pharisees and that of Herod. They discussed with one another and said, it is because we have no bread. So they're thinking, all right, the yeast of the Pharisees. Oh, we forgot to bring bread. Jesus is warning us that we needed to bring bread. If I didn't have a hat and glasses, I would palm to the face on that. Oh my goodness. Somebody's got that emote. Drop that in the chat. I don't have that. But palm to the face. All over disciples here. Aware of their discussion, Jesus asked them, why are you talking about having no bread? Do you still not see or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Jesus finally says and points the finger at their problem. They have hard hearts. They just don't see and understand half of what he's telling them. Do you have eyes but fail to see and ears but fail to see? Do you not remember when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000? How many baskets of pieces did you pick up? 12, they replied. And when I broke the 7 loaves for the 4,000, how many basketfuls of pieces did you pick up? They answered 7. He said to them, do you still not understand? He's trying to get them to see and understand. Oh, they don't get it. They just don't get who he is and what he just did. They came to Bethsaida, and some people brought a blind man and begged Jesus to touch him. He took the blind man by the hand and led him outside the village. Again, taking him away from the crowd. Now, taking him outside the village. When he had spit on the man's eyes and put his hands on him, Jesus asked, do you see anything? He looked up and said, I see people. They look like trees walking around. Once more, Jesus put his hands on the man's eyes. Then his eyes were opened. His sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly. Jesus sent him home, saying, don't even go into the village. So he's so worried this guy's going to go tell everybody. He says, don't go into town. Just go home. Just go home. They're going to see you walking around. They're going to know who you are. Just you walking through the village as a blind person, now able to see. They're going to see that I did this. Just go away. Just go away. But I want to point this out, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. But again, we had the spit. I mentioned that before, so we've talked about that. But notice, this is a 2-stage miracle. This is fascinating. Is it because Jesus didn't have the power to do it all at once? Was there something so hard to heal here? No. No, Jesus did this as an example at times, that he gives us something we need and later gives us the fullness of it. There's more I could say and check into that in regards to, but there's a truth in there about sometimes what we're really looking for and is going to come, and we don't get it all at once. Like I said, there's more in that, but I want to keep moving along so we can finish our text this morning before I have a meeting at a hard out at 10. So Jesus and his disciples went on to the villages across Caesarea Philippi. On the way, he asked them, "Who do people say I am?" Hey, Warrior of Light, good to see you in here, friend. Thanks for stopping by for a bit. We are in Mark's Gospel. They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others the prophets." "But what about you?" he asked. "Who do you say I am?" Peter answered, "You are the Messiah." Jesus warned them not to tell anyone about him. What? So we know this story from other Gospels. I don't want to bring that in any way. I want to just dwell on what Mark is doing. Again, I've been trying to show this to you. Here's another incident of it. Don't tell anyone who I am. He asks who people say. He wants to make sure his disciples understand who he is, but he doesn't want them sharing that. This is what Mark does. He's this divine secret that's supposed to drive us to say, I want to tell everybody about who Jesus is. I wonder if the blind man needed some help with his faith. Maybe he didn't think it was really possible, so he gave him a little sight where he had none to convince him it was possible. You know, that is a very great insight. I love those kinds of thoughts and questions. I suspect you could be right, but here's one of the things I usually say when I do that. I say, I wonder, or I think, or this might possibly be. I try to make clear I'm not saying this is, because Scripture doesn't tell us what is. But I think there's truth absolutely in what you're saying, that sometimes, then I was trying to make that point indirectly, and I'm glad you picked up on it. Sometimes God gives us a little bit of what we're asking for because we have a little faith. And by giving us a little, our faith grows and we're able to fully ask for what we want. And he's fully able to give us everything that we are asking for. It's a great point. Glad you picked up on that and shared that. Jesus predicts his death. So on the account of them identifying who he is, now he's going to start telling them what he's going to do. He then began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and after 3 days rise again. He spoke plainly about this, so he wasn't hiding it. It wasn't in couched language. It wasn't in a parable. It was direct, like it was just stated. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. Notice Peter doesn't do it in front of everyone else. Even though Peter's doing the wrong thing, I love the approach he has. He takes him aside. Jesus, let me explain to you. You ain't going to die, buddy. This ain't going to happen. We're not interested in that. We want a different path for you. But when Jesus turned and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter. "Get behind me, Satan," he said. "You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." So Jesus looks at his disciple and rebukes him. So he does this, and he does it right to his face. And what's the accusation? You have mere human concerns. What's the problem with all of the Pharisees and the religious leaders and the teachers of law? They have merely human concerns. What was the problem with their laws? And we've got to do it this way, and you're violating things. Mere human concerns, not the things of God, not the concerns of God. It's not on your heart. You don't have God's heart in mind. Then he called the crowd to him along with his disciples and said, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it." Soul or life. Okay. "For what good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul?" Sorry. Sorry about that. I don't usually take phone calls. However, I had a nail in my tire. I'm supposed to be driving 3 hours away today, and that was the auto shop telling me my new tires, are all set and ready to go. You wish your ringtone was that cool. I just the generic ringtone that came in. I didn't think it was that cool, but anyway, sorry about the interruption. Like I said, I don't normally do that. But I got a few things going on. So, okay, so let's get back to what was going on here. Okay, so for whoever wants to save their life will lose it. Whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it if someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels. This is just fascinating. Jesus asks who he is, and they say who he is, and then he tells them what he is going to do, and he gets rebuked. Now, after being rebuked about, well, the rebuking the disciples about only having human concerns, after rebuking, I want you to catch this, after rebuking the religious leaders about only having mere human concerns, he turns this to the crowd, and really this is a turning to us and saying, are you concerned only about mere human concerns? Because if you're willing to lose your life on account of me and the gospel, you are concerned about things of God, not about mere human concerns. If you're only concerned about saving your life, you're only concerned with mere human concerns, and you're not concerned with me. So he then equates that with, what can you exchange for your soul? Isn't your soul more valuable? Isn't the things of God more valuable? What does it look like? Well, it looks like taking up your cross daily. It looks like taking the risk, even of your own life, to say, I know who Jesus is. I know who the Savior is. I know who you need. And the recompense might not come in this lifetime. It might not come until his return. Are you concerned with merely human concerns? That's what he's driving to here. And that's why he's saying take up the cross daily is a call to daily put aside mere human concerns, to take and be concerned with things of God. That's what that is. Okay. Hope that made sense. Hope that's a blessing to you, friends. We need